Thank you for joining us and listening to our podcast. Our goal is to inform and entertain you by sharing our knowledge and experiences of owning a business while making you aware of the risks, rewards, joys, and heartaches.
My co-host, JoAnn R. Forrester, is an award-winning business owner, teacher, author, columnist, small business advocate, and former host of the Empress of Biz podcast, Listen, Learn, and Prosper. She has 35 plus years of guiding small business owners to success. As a small business growth management consultant, she has secured over $70 million in loans and investments for her clients. Currently, JoAnn is president of the Pennsylvania Women's Hall of Achievement and co-founder of Celebrate and Share. You can contact her at 412-670-4322. 412-670-4322.
My co-host, Sal Acosta, is a business broker who has helped over 100 business owners sell their businesses. He can help you buy or sell a business anywhere in the United States. If you would like a free and confidential consultation, please call him at area code 484-358-9470. He is ready to speak with you and discuss how to achieve your business objectives.
Well, welcome to the Empress of Biz and the Duke of Business, Sal Acosta. I'm JoAnn Forrester, and we're going to be doing something using our experience. Between Sal and I, we have, let's admit it, 60 years of experience of being in business. So that experience is invaluable. And we hope to show you what we've learned. And we're going to talk about something that I have found has been either a help or a hindrance, relationships in business. And before you start a business, this is going to be a part of a series that Sal and I are going to be discussing and hopefully writing together. You've got to take a look at your experiences that you have. Your experiences, your relationships, are they for it or are they against it? Now, Sal works kind of different side of the street than I do, because usually you're in the buying or selling part of the business, and I'm in the getting people into business and keeping them there so they can be bought and sold. I think between the two of us, we have a great bit of knowledge to share with you. Welcome, Sal. It's so good to see you. We haven't done this for a while. It's great to see you.
No, absolutely, JoAnn. It's always great to be here with you. And by the way, just not only in our current professional capacities, helping people, buy or sell a business or start a business, whatever. I know you have been, and so have I, actual entrepreneurs in the past. So we can also talk about our personal relationships in terms of all this beyond what we have worked with other folks that have worked with us now.
Right, and I think that's what makes us so credible. So I wanted to talk to you about when you start to work with a person, and usually, someone wants to sell their business or someone wants to buy their business. So you have a process, and let's talk about the people. What do you do with the potential buyer and at their relationship? What's some of your things that you're looking for personally so you can make a deal?
Well, if you're trying to help somebody buy a business, the absolute first thing is, of course, the most obvious and the most simple one, right? Is your family supporting you? Okay. And it's a very simple question, but it's a long, complicated answer. And when I say family, I mean not even just necessarily your spouse, maybe your mother-in-law, your father-in-law, your own parents, your own kids, if, depending on the age, again, brothers, sisters. And then, by the way, even from there, friends, right? Are they on board with this idea? Are they supporting you? Are they being genuine or in their support, or are they just kind of going along with the flow? So, that's very important. And then if you're selling, a lot of times the most common reason for selling is for people to go into retirement. I know we're going to go a little bit deeper into this, but it's the same thing. Are your friends, are your family in support of you retiring? And how do you see that lifestyle changing when you are in retirement? Okay. And I don't want to get, too deep right now, because again, we're just starting, but even for people that have a normal job, retirement is a major life change, has a lot of variables to it. So you got to make sure that, again, if the reason you're selling is you're going into retirement, that everybody that's in your family and your extended family, friends is supportive of that. And also, what are their plans for retirement if there's a timing disconnect?
One of the things that I have found, because in one of my lives I was a counselor and I took those skills into what we do now, is that for women who are starting their business or who want to buy a business, there's still this expectation that you are the caretaker of the family. And what's that going to do to your role in taking care of the family, the kids, the husband? It still exists today. Maybe less, but still, that woman who's starting her own business, either buying or doing the startup from the business, she has problems with her relationships that men generally don't have. And one of the things that when I did my research, I suspected of this, but the Census Bureau and U.S. Chamber of Commerce and a couple other people are confirming that the divorce rate is anywhere from 5 to 15% higher for entrepreneurs and small business owners. I can understand that. I used to kid and say, instead of getting married again, I go and start another business. That's probably why I had 5 businesses at one time. But have you had many women who wanted to buy businesses? Let's start with that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And so let me start by saying this. Again, maybe it should be obvious, but unfortunately it isn't. When you are a small business owner, when you are an entrepreneur, that is an all-consuming endeavor. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And don't make the mistake of thinking, okay, fine, the business that I'm starting maybe works 8 to 5, Monday through Friday. So those are the hours that I'm going to deal with the business. And then the rest of the time I have for my family, for my spouse, for other things, right? No, wrong. The doors of the business may be open Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, but you will be working on that business 24/7. Because outside of that Monday 8 to 5, Monday through Friday 8 to 5, you'll be working on all the stuff you couldn't work at that point. Paperwork, purchasing stuff, tax returns, hiring people, interviewing people, talking to vendors, talking to customers. And so again, your family, your spouse needs to be aware that you're going to be engaged in this all-consuming endeavor. All the people that you're going to be talking to, all the people that you're going to be engaging with are somehow related to the business. When it's midnight and you can't go to sleep, you're not counting sheep, you're probably talking about the money in the cash register. So, people have to be prepared for that. The family has to be prepared for that because, you may be coming from a job where you could disconnect. I mean, it's becoming rare, but there's jobs that you can disconnect when you go home. When you're a business owner, you never disconnect. And the other thing that I'm going to say, maybe kind of related to what you're alluded to in terms of divorce, and I am not a counselor, but I do know that one of the main drivers of divorce is financial issues. When you're an entrepreneur, if under normal circumstances for the general population, the driver is financial, when you're an entrepreneur, that gets magnified by a factor of 10 or 100, starting with the fact that a lot of times you don't know when the next paycheck is coming from. Sometimes you might have a big win. Sometimes you might go literally months without a paycheck. And in the meantime, it's your partner, it's your spouse that's paying all the bills and keeping the house afloat, right? And then if an important customer calls, again, you got to drop everything and take care of him. And, and that can create some resentment, quite frankly. On the one hand, you may have a person that's the entrepreneur is never available. You can never count on any fixed income from them. And then here's the other person getting up every day at 6 or 7 in the morning to be in the office at 8 to bring in the steady paycheck. And sometimes the benefits too, health benefits and other benefits, which are very important. It's very easy to see how that could create some resentment in the relationship if those things haven't been worked out, or even if they have, at some point, one of the partners gets tired.
One of the things that also happens is if you have children, especially I find teenagers, either they're going to be very supportive or they're going to be very resentful because maybe your lifestyle The money that you had to give them isn't there. The things that they were used to, that is going into the business. And that can create a great deal of disruption. And that decision to go into business, and not just once, needs to be reviewed and the family brought in. Some of the ways that people try to counteract that is to bring the whole family into the business. Sometimes that works, and sometimes that doesn't, especially if you're growing a larger business and you're bringing more family members in. You either do one of two things. You treat them more severe than you do your employees, or you give them a lot more leeway than you do your employees. That is again, the people issue. That's a fine balance at the walk. I know some very successful second and third and even up to fourth generation businesses that have managed that, but the success rate for people continuing on their business in the family-owned business, I was looking at the recent statistics, it's less than 30% continue on. And then getting to the fourth generation, that's really hard, but it can be done. I mean, look at Sam Walton. He did it. Mary Kay Ash, she did it. Bill Gates is doing it. I don't think his kids is involved in the business. But that's an issue. Now, when you go to sell a business, have you had to have family issues? I mean, like children, like say, wait a minute, what, did they become a problem, or were they just glad to see it go?
Well, first of all, let me say this. When you talk about selling the business and before you even talk about the children, one thing that I've encountered, and more frequently than you would expect, is the business is being run by a husband and wife couple, and that's fine, and they've done it for years, and they've been very successful. But when it comes to selling the business, one of them wants to sell it and the other one doesn't. And unfortunately, sometimes they're not upfront about that disconnect. And I think sometimes they're not even upfront within themselves and with each other. Like, one says, hey, I want to sell this. And the other says, no, I don't. So you enter into very strange dynamics, let me call it, where it seems like they want to sell it, but then there's someone in the background trying to do everything possible for the transaction not to go through and the deal not to go through. So that's one thing that I've seen, and one thing to be cognizant of. And whether you use a business broker like myself or just do it on your own or however you do it, it's important to have that very, very, very honest conversation so that both are on the same page. Now, to your point, that could also go on to the next generation in cases where you're right, the kids are involved in the business. And of course, now you have a significant age gap, right, where the parents may be ready to sell and retire, but the kids are not. But that's their source of income, is participating in this business. At the same time, they're not interested in buying it, or they don't have the financial capacity. So things start to get a little turbulent and start to get a little nervous. The last thing I'll say on that is sometimes the parents, which are the owners, want to do a transaction where they say, hey, I want to sell the business, but the new owner is obligated to keep my kids on the staff and on the payroll. Sometimes they want it to be indefinitely or for long periods of time or whatever the case may be. Sometimes they get paid more than they should. Sometimes they're paid less than they should. Sometimes they're good. Sometimes they're bad. So again, that's a whole other situation, can of worms that we can talk about all day here.
Right. Let's go to the pre-startup, because regardless of whether they're going to buy a business or they're going to start, from scratch, they've taken my course or something like that, I emphasize, and I was really thinking about this because of the 6 stages of business. I really thought, that pre-startup, before they even write a business plan, there needs to be a lot of soul searching and a lot of discussion and agreement that takes place with all those around you. And I see that not happening most of the time. I see that, somehow, okay, dad wants to start the business. Mom's making these great cookies. She's going to start the business. And nobody really thinks about, as we've mentioned before, the change that's going to put on the person. Like, as you mentioned before, maybe one partner will keep on working to keep the family going with the benefits, and that's a scary part. People forget about how much benefits cost, hospitalization, and things like that. You got to have that. It just becomes a real need for conversation. So that I like to start with people saying, have you sat down and talked to everyone you know? Not everyone, but your family. This is what I want to do. And see how they really are feeling about it. And some people want to say, oh, great. And other people want to just say, oh, you're crazy. So you've got to be prepared for that part. And in my book that we're going to be writing, I have a lot of questions to ask people. And one of the things that I ask, and I know you do this when people are coming for selling, but I ask people to take a snapshot of their financial status. Okay, this is where you're at. When you start a business, what's going to happen? And I'm surprised. Well, I was surprised myself when I did it. Actually, I didn't do it. Let's be honest. I just jumped in. I just somehow thought magically things were going to happen, and that didn't always happen. The cost of insurance, health insurance, the cost of being able to get life insurance, being able to get disability. If you've worked for corporations, you've had that nice little package, or you've worked for a nice sized small business, often you have those nice little benefits. Then people are shocked when that doesn't occur. And that adds to the cost of starting business, because someone's got to carry that. How do you find that people react to that when you have that discussion?
Oh, let me tell you, it's an issue of being honest. And the problem is, not only is it being honest in the moment, but again, it's being honest down the road. So, one spouse may say, okay, fine, I have no problem continuing to bring in the steady paycheck. I have no problem continuing to bring in the benefits, because they buy into the vision that you're going to start this company and you're going to become the next, whatever, Tesla, Mary Kay. But then 6 months go by, a year go by, 2 years go by, and you're nowhere near that level. Maybe you're just surviving. Maybe you're even consuming cash from the other check, right? And then that spouse that was very supportive and willing to do this sacrifice for some period of time to get this thing off the ground starts to realize that, this is never going to get off the ground. At the same time, you have the other one that doesn't want to admit failure. So they keep going simply because they've invested time and effort and maybe money into this thing that now they can't get out. They're upside down. But as long as they continue running the business, they don't have to admit failure. And that's where you can get into a real pickle. And again, the resentment, the disconnect, frankly, going back to your point, the divorce, because, the person that's running the business, they always have a plan to turn it around. They always have a plan to improve it, right? It's rare to run into that situation where that person has internal and external honesty to say, hey, you know what? I tried this for 6 months. I tried this for a year. It didn't work. I'm upside down. We're going to shut it down. We're going to take the loss, and I'm going to go back to having a boss and being the employee of someone else. And then all the stresses and all the things that go with that, right?
Right. It is hard to go back to working for someone else. I'm a lousy employee, so I just kept on plowing ahead.
Well, yeah, and to your point, by the way, it could have been that the reason they started the business is because they didn't have the right temperament, aptitude, character to be an employee of someone else, whether it was a big company or a little company, because let's face it, that's a certain dynamic that you engage in. And maybe you say, okay, I don't have what it takes to be within this dynamic. Let me go run my own little business so I can be my own boss, call the shots, have the flexibility, whatever. But now if you're not good at that either, then what do you do?
Well, I have a couple stories where one of the most successful family businesses I know, the father went bankrupt 3 times. And his wife was a saint. That 4th time, they hit it big. They're still in business 60 years later. We did some consulting, not on the failure, but when he was trying to expand. He failed once. Him and his wife sat down and said, what was wrong? They gathered the money again, went back in. Same thing happened. 3rd time, same thing happened. The 4th try, they hit it. And they're still in business. And that's unusual. But somehow they both had the courage to admit, okay, these things went upside down. We're going to go back in and do it right. And the 4th time it worked. It was just amazing. The whole family is still in business, which is good. So, there are success stories. And I think that when you were saying using the word honest, You have to learn to be honest with yourself because, I've gotten kicked in my butt a couple times. Some of that picked the wrong partners. Some of that I thought I knew what I was doing and I didn't use a lawyer to protect myself. And I was the one that ended up paying a significant real estate debt, and I did it. So I think one thing about being in business is if you are willing to be honest with yourself, you really grow as a person, and you can often turn it around and make another business go better. Because 40% of new business owners could do it again. I was amazed at that statistic. Here we are, crawling back in again.
Oh, and let me tell you, let me just bring up a point real quick because you said about, bringing the family into the business. And as you were talking about, should you bring the family into the business, pros and cons. And sometimes people bring the family into the business sort of through the back door and they start asking for favors and they start asking for help and they're not paying for that labor. And sometimes that, because I've seen this as some real life cases where now all of a sudden it seems like the business is successful because you have a net profit, you're putting money into the bank, all your financial indicators are going the right way. But what they don't tell you is, hey, I've got 2 or 3 kids that are working full time in the business for free. I've got a spouse that's working full time in the business for free. If I actually paid those people what they should be paid on a market rate, this business might not be making money. It might be break even, or it might be very low to the point where there's no return on investment. The only reason the business looks good is because I have all this free labor. Once again, eventually those folks are going to get tired. If it's adult children, independent of their education and other options, if it's a spouse, again, independent of their education and other options, there comes a point in time where people get tired of working for free.
Right. And one of the things that I tell whoever spouse is working for free, and often it's the woman, I say, look, I get other benefits and I get this and that. I said, but do you understand that your Social Security is based upon your quarters you've had and at what rate? So that actually some never get the 40 quarters to qualify for Social Security, even though they've worked 40 years in the small business, because they haven't reported that or they haven't taken out a separate pension plan for that woman. So that is the sad part. And that leaves the family in a precarious position because one person has worked all her life or his life. I know one case, his life. And all of a sudden, there's nothing there for them, and the business isn't wealthy enough or stable enough to sell for a whole lot of money. They've got something. So that in the business planning, and I tell people, you start out a pension. That's one of the good things about owning your own business is the type of benefit plans you can set up for yourself. In fact, I think we're going to have a guest on that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And by the way, avoid creep in everything. And by that, I mean, for example, it could be that your formal business plan is for one of the spouses to work for free for 6 months, because let's face it, and that's normal at the beginning. Maybe there's not that much cash flow. You're growing the business, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But avoid the creep that the 6 months turn out to be 6 years. And along with that, and I know we've talked about this in the past, I always advise people have very clear parameters to pull the plug on this business. 6 months out, these are the numbers you have to be hitting in terms of revenue, cash flow, whatever, a year, 2, 3 years out. Because what you want to avoid is the same thing that, you keep going, you have a business that's break even, or maybe even a small loss subsidized by the steady income from the other spouse, or just a very minimal cash flow that doesn't justify the time and the effort. But because you don't have very clear criteria, very clear parameters to pull the plug on that, the one that's running it doesn't want to admit defeat and go through that embarrassment, and then they just keep investing their time in that forever. Don't realize the opportunity cost of getting a regular job in a regular company with a regular boss, and then it's just kind of becomes a zombie that just kind of goes on forever.
Yeah, that's true. I know one high income couple. She makes a lot of money, and I have to laugh because she was interested in him losing money to offset their taxes. And one year she really got mad at him when he made a lot of money. And I'm sitting there going, he made money. I mean, and we're talking, she made a lot of money. I mean, that was an interesting twist.
And I'll tell you, by the way, here, let me just mention this too, because this is one of those that frankly is not that obvious. It goes back to both of us having been entrepreneurs ourselves. This is one that I had to discover the hard way, just doing it myself. And things have changed, technology has changed, but be aware that just like being an entrepreneur is all encompassing for your time, for your priorities, for your lifestyle, it's also all encompassing for your house. Sometimes people think, oh, the famous garage business, right? Oh, I'm going to start this little business in the garage and I'm going to put cookies in a tin and sell them and whatever. Okay, great. They don't realize, again, creep. First, you got to park the cars outside, and that's fine. Maybe that's a sacrifice that's obvious, but trust me, that business will never stay contained into the garage. It's going to start going into the guest bedroom. It's going to start going into the kitchen. It's going to start going into the living room. And next thing you know, your house has turned into a factory or a warehouse or a restaurant or something, a ghost kitchen. Now we have the ghost kitchen. It's turned into something that is not a house. Usually that's where, let's be honest, the female spouse, the woman, starts to get very upset because she's lost her kitchen and she's lost her living room and she's lost her guest room. Again, just another source of acrimony. Maybe the business is not financially big enough to go rent space somewhere. Okay, because that's the other side, right? You're not financially big enough, stable enough to say, hey, okay, fine, I'm going to rent a warehouse or an office or whatever. Your profits are predicated on this no overhead being in the house. Now you got a very upset spouse.
I had one client, he went out and took the home equity loan. He built a whole second floor or third floor, and that became their living quarters. That's how he solved the problem. They're still married. You got to have a sense of humor. You really do when you own a business, and some creativity. And I saw with my own son, that taught him, I mean, the poor kid was answering the phone, hello, SI Business Associates, and this is, child labor at its best. And I don't know how many stamps he licked. He was so glad. He says, I never was so glad as an adult to see self-sticking stamps.
Again, this is a real life story. I had a client once, her business is, she had her own separate kitchen. So she set it up correctly. She had her own separate kitchen with bathroom and water and everything. And she made these products that then she would take to convenience stores and gas stations and restaurants and whatever and give it to them and they would sell them. And so that was all fine. And she would do other stuff that she would deliver. Okay, fine. The people in the community started to figure out that this is what she did. And one day they're banging her door at 3 a.m. on a Friday or a Saturday, dead drunk, and basically saying, listen, we'll pay you whatever you want. Open the door and make some of this stuff because we're hungry. I'm sure it was a hassle for her, but I can only think of, again, the rest of the family. Now you've created this magnet that it's attracting the drunks at 3 a.m. banging down the door.
Yeah, weird things can happen. One of the things we're saying is that when you want to start, buy, sell, you really need to sit down and think about where you're at and start communicating. And if you're going to start or buy one, you have to start with a good financial snapshot of where you're at. And then you have to start with the money. Know where you are first before you even start those conversations, because they're going to ask those kind of questions, and they should. So you need to know as much about finances and where you want to go and how you're going to get that. And then you start talking and asking the questions. And then sometimes you make the decision to postpone it because you need more money, or postpone it because there's certain events that are happening in your life that you'd like to participate in. You do get caught up. You're going to work 60 hours a week. And there's no such thing as 40 hours and go home. You don't even want to be honest. I mean, I can do this and I can build this, and your mind's constantly going, much to the sometimes the frustration of people around you. Those conversations and that preliminary investigation will help you prevent, I think, a lot of businesses from failing. What do you think?
Oh, absolutely. And you kind of hit it on the head, but I'm going to make it even more clear for people that are listening and watching. On the one hand, you may think, oh, I've got the flexibility that I can go watch the kids play the little league at 3 p.m. on a Wednesday. Well, recognize that you may be sitting there getting business calls on your cell phone. And when you're a small business owner and you're just starting out and you can't afford to lose a single customer, you need to take that phone call. So now you're not watching the balls and the strikes. You're in the stands talking to this customer, hoping everybody else is quiet so you can have this business conversation. And you're not enjoying the game and you're not in the moment. So recognize that that's going to happen. And I don't care if it's a wedding, a bar mitzvah, a baseball game, whatever it is, you're going to be taken out of the moment and the opportunity to enjoy that. And the other thing that you kind of alluded to, and again, I'm going to try to be a little more blunt about this. Most people, whether they're buying a business or starting it or whatever, don't do a good job or don't do a job at all of putting together a business plan. Sometimes the bank forces them to put together a business plan, but they do the absolute minimum to get the loan. Now you're in a situation where that business plan needs to dovetail with your family budget. And it's the same thing. Most people don't even have a family budget. Okay, right. So now you got to do the exercise twice financially. You're going to say, okay, this is what my business plan and my business financials look like. And this is what my household budget looks like. And those two things need to line up and dovetail. And again, have some criteria for pulling the plug.
That's an excellent point because, like you say, a lot of people don't do even personal budgets. The other thing is that I say take a look at your credit score and watch that because, when I first started in business, credit scores were not that demanding or just weren't there. Now, they're the be-all. They even determine your insurance rates, which people often don't realize. So that you need to be very aware of what your credit score is, because that credit score is going to carry you for a couple years until you establish your own business. I think that one of the maybe next conversations that we could have is how to look at your budget, how to check your credit score, how to figure out family budget and what to do about that. That to me would be interesting.
Absolutely. And which is also makes it a little bit more complicated, making sure you have the right allocations or the right money set aside for big future expenses, whether it's retirement, college education for a kid, whatever the case may be. Those are easy to overlook because they're in the future, yet because they're big and important, you have to make sure you have those bases covered.
Yeah, that's true. Or go to work, kid, real early. That's what I was told. Out the door. It's funny. Our parents, or at least my parents, you're 18 and you're on your own. That was interesting. Different time, And
I know we need to wrap this up, but let me tell you, this was a very eye-opening for me because my family background was different, talking about family backgrounds. My girlfriend in college, if she went back home for the summer, she paid rent in her parents' house. That was the level that they took it to. It's like, not only are you on your own, you're coming back for the summer, you're paying rent.
Well, it teaches you financial responsibility, that's for sure, early. I know my son was quite mad when he graduated and he had to come home, and I said, well, you pay rent. He had a very good job. What? I pay rent? Yeah, you eat, you pay rent. That's it. And he's quite a good money manager. I'm quite proud of him. Well, Sal, anything like you would like to say as a wrap-up?
No, that just, again, we're both here to help anybody that thinks they need help, that maybe these topics resonated, that they'd like to either do a deeper dive or, quite frankly, maybe have somebody help facilitate the conversation or help them with the accounting and the budgeting, whatever. I guess I know I speak for both of us when we're here to help anybody that thinks they can use the help.
And also that we are working on a book. Working title right this second, who knows what it's going to be, is, what do you do before you write that business plan? That's crucial. And, based on the talk, you can see that if you don't think of that, often just jumping in is what can set you and the family up for failure. So our goal is not to prevent you from doing things, but our goal is to help you do them and be successful and everybody enjoy the ride. So this is the Empress of Biz. Sal, thank you for getting along with me. Thank you for jumping into this adventure with me. We hope that you will learn from our journey, from our work with other people and our work with ourselves. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us and listening to our podcast. Our goal is to inform and entertain you by sharing our knowledge and experiences of owning a business while making you aware of the risks, rewards, joys, and heartaches.
My co-host, JoAnn R. Forrester, is an award-winning business owner, teacher, author, columnist, small business advocate, and former host of the Empress of Biz podcast, Listen, Learn, and Prosper. She has 35 years plus of experience guiding small business owners to success. As a small business growth management consultant, she has secured over $70 million in loans and investments for her clients. Currently, JoAnn is president of the Pennsylvania Women's Hall of Achievement and co-founder of Celebrate and Share. You can contact her at 412-670-4322. 412-670-4322.
My co-host, Sal Acosta, also known as the Duke of Business, is a business broker who has helped over 100 business owners sell their businesses. He can help you buy or sell a business anywhere in the United States. If you would like a free and confidential consultation, please call him at area code 484-358-9470. That's area code 484-358-9470. He is ready to speak with you and discuss how to achieve your business dreams.